Well, we got February the 19th here, and I guess we're in a lot of the country is still kind of under some bad weather conditions here, and I hear now the big problem is water as the power gets back on. So I'd like to start off here a little comment there. I want to go ahead today and kind of get into what I call the aftermath of our current political situation here a little bit. So first of all, I mean, we've gotten past this impeachment fiasco and all that, but now we're getting into a whole other issue, because one thing that's left out of all this, there really is truly a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, mostly the impeachment was based on accusations rather than facts. And so, in that sense, now the real issues come up. For instance, what we really don't know is exactly what did happen and who really was behind all the activity on January the 6th. And I think that's kind of an important issue going forward, because there's going to be litigation. There already is a congressman from Massachusetts, I think back by the NAACP, who's sued Trump and Giuliani, basically claiming that he had conspired with the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys to launch this attack on the Capitol. And I guess the plaintiff, being a member of Congress, therefore theoretically on the receiving end, was a victim. Okay, so that's kind of the basis of that lawsuit, and of course it'll be in the District of D.C. court system, which is probably the most unfavorable court system for for Trump and company. So that's interesting. But at the same time, I think it makes a pretty outlandish claim ultimately. I mean, the idea that there was actually direct contact between Trump and Giuliani and so forth, and the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys and I guess the 3%ers and whichever other group out there that got involved in this. That seems a little incredible. I mean, who knows what the whole thing is, but it gets into a question which has yet been answered, was really what was actually afoot on January the 6th. I mean, my perception of it was that this was an attempt by a set of people in Congress and the senators not to overturn the election in reality, at least not on the 6th. It was to actually ask for some sort of an audit of the votes and a selected set of 5 or 6 states, which were kind of were being disputed by Trump. And because the courts in almost all cases never looked at the real evidence, but simply made issues of standing and so forth, procedural issues, we never really got down to the whole issue. Granted, 2 or 3 of Trump's key cases were not based on that either. They were also basically on what he was arguing was unconstitutional changes in the election laws. And interestingly enough, those cases, while emergency appeals were denied by the Supreme Court, the actual case hasn't been rejected yet. And so, I mean, there is an interesting question, and I'm still a hopeful that the Pennsylvania lawsuit will eventually be successful in overturning the election changes that were made during the 2020 election. Now, I don't think that'll have any impact on who's president. I don't think any of this litigation is going to change the outcome of the office holder. That's just my perception. The court will probably argue that's too late to make a decision of that sort, and it would be too disruptive, whatever. I don't see that happening. But if you could roll back some of these arbitrary changes to election laws, then the problem is for the next election in 2022, they would then have to have overt action to reestablish them. And if the precedents are against the changes made in 2020, and if the pandemic is over by that time, then the rationale for anything other than just normal legislative process probably will be reduced, and we might get back to somewhat of a normal voting pattern and normal systems, relatively speaking, compared to what we had in 2020. And so I think that's one thing I'm looking for and what I'm calling the aftermath of this. That we'll see what happens next week when these do get to the Supreme Court, but it'll be an interesting thing. The other issue, I guess, is really the kind of, and I need to get some better timeline data on this, but my perception is that the anti-Trump factions have kind of overstated their case. There is a issue of a phone call between Kevin McCarthy and Trump where when the people were pounding on the doors and things were getting out of control, in which Trump had some perception that somehow that Antifa was involved in this as the primary attacker, and basically McCarthy said no, it's your people or something to that effect. I don't. At any rate, they were not. It turns out they were more your, let's use the term right-wing militia, for the lack of a better term, type individuals, and the Proud Boys, which I don't think are really a militia at all. They're kind of a anti-Antifa group, basically. They're kind of mirror imaging Antifa. I don't think they're near as violent or destructive overall as Antifa overall. I mean, maybe in this specific instance, yes, but overall not. And anyhow, and as I recall, I think right after that, Trump issued some tweet along the lines of basically that basically everybody should respect law enforcement and be peaceful and so forth. Now, Trump critics, of course, have come back and they basically say, well, that's just not enough. He didn't say enough or whatever. Although they seem to have the idea that he somehow had some kind of command and control over the the frontline rioters, which I don't think he had at all. I don't think they were monitoring their phones or anything else on a real-time basis to see what he might have tweeted. I mean, I think that the House managers came up with a case, which, like I mentioned in a previous video, where they looked at somebody, 2 or 3 hours later, where they were following something he said. But these were people that weren't in the Capitol either; they were on the outside, and so I think that's doesn't mean anything. But what does mean something is the depositions that are probably going to flow from this. And we just don't know. They're going to obviously depose a lot of the staff members of the White House and other people. And then I guess since there's a lawsuit, Trump's attorneys can also depose a variety of people associated with this too, depending on what the judges rule. Again, I think we have an Obama judge. So, of course, that could get into appeals and all kinds of things. But essentially, we have a situation where there's going to be some ongoing litigation. People will be put under oath, and we'll have to get a little bit better idea of what really happened. Even to me, I don't fully grasp exactly what Trump was trying to accomplish on the 6th. My thought was it was a protest. That is to say, he was just basically trying to have his people make his case that there were serious voting irregularities and that, there ought to be some kind of an audit of it. However, between January the 6th and the 20th, I don't think there was a lot of time to do that. And I guess if everybody was on board, some kind of accommodations could be made. But it would seem to me that if a decision wasn't made by the 20th, Nancy Pelosi would have become president. And I don't know if there's any exact procedure for a Speaker of the House, becoming president, not under the 25th Amendment, vice presidential succession issues, but literally there's a vacancy at the top at noon on the 20th, and it hasn't been filled. I think that means the Speaker of the House becomes president and basically president for the entire 4-year term. And so that's why there was a lot of time pressure in all this thing to get to an answer, and that's why I kind of felt that basically after the 14th of December certification and safe harbor position, there was not going to be anything really favorable happening to us. And obviously, President Trump must have had other advice and ideas, but I don't see how that would really have happened. I thought it could be no more than basically just a statement of, hey, I got a raw deal here, basically. And maybe we ought to have some reforms in the election law so it doesn't happen again. But that doesn't at all mesh with the idea that you wanted a bunch of rioters to break into the Capitol and do what once they got in there. I don't know, assault members of Congress or go after certain key people. That doesn't make any sense. And in my opinion, is those charges are completely false. I believe they're false on logic. And so, as such, we'll see what the evidence produces. Now, the House side of it, the other side of it is going to make a big deal about what various rioters who are now being prosecuted are saying. But one has to remember, one, their perceptions don't necessarily have to match with reality. That's just what they interpreted that somebody wanted. A lot of times people that are vigilantes think that law enforcement wants them to go out and do their vigilante thing. But in reality, when they get in court, they're going to find out that, no, they really didn't. And so, that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect, let's face it, they've got lawyers. They're going to go on trial probably in D.C., probably the most unfavorable jurisdiction for them. Judges are overwhelmingly Democrat appointees. Juries will be almost all 100% Democrat anti-Trump people. So you're not, and the evidence is probably going to be almost irrefutable that they were there and they broke some law. So their best bet is to try to, get some of the more serious charges dropped in order to get a plea deal for some of the lesser charges, such as basically trespassing on federal property charge or something of that sort. And basically get a lighter sentence by saying all kinds of negative things to how Trump led him astray, which should be music to the ears of the Democrat judges. So therefore, I don't take any of that seriously unless they have hard evidence that there was actual line of communication from somebody that was talking to Trump, conveying a message to them. And barring that, I don't see that has any validity at all. But that's obviously what Democrat activists are going to try to push. And that's and this isn't about impeachment anymore. That's over with. What we're really talking about now is prosecution, and above all else, civil suits, liability suits for a variety of issues. And obviously, probably ultimately trying to bankrupt Trump if they can. I mean, this is the kind of vicious thing you're dealing with. We've also seen all the absolutely hateful things that Democrats are saying after the death of Rush Limbaugh, and this is a similar phenomenon here. So I just want to go through that. And then I want to touch on one other thing here before I close, and that is the post-election status in the Republican Party. And I saw an interview with Mike Pence's chief of staff on Fox special report last night, which I thought was very good. I think what we need to do is get past all this stuff. I thought that Mitch McConnell made a big mistake in the things he said after the impeachment vote. Now, it could very well be just an appeal to the donor class, to say, hey, guys, go back and give us money again. Let's face it, without that money, the Democrats will probably win. Just a fact. Unless we're all prepared to ante up and give a lot of money. I mean, I know I gave a fair amount during the last election cycle, more than I've ever given in any presidential election cycle ever, by at least a factor of 2, maybe 3, I don't know, something in that range. So, and of course, most of us are of limited means, I suppose. I'm not exactly rich myself by the standards of people we're talking about in these donor classes, for sure, or multi-millionaires or even billionaires. So. But the point is that a $25 or $50 can make a difference if enough people do it. The problem I have is that what that leads to is, masses of snail mail from every candidate in the entire spectrum practically. And it got to the point I was getting emails even from the Democrats and Stacey Abrams on it, even though I gave no money to any Democrat. So, you kind of wonder. I really think these guys, if they would kind of not go so ape on snail mail all the time, and maybe you could get more smaller contributions, but I'm hesitant in many cases to contribute to anything unless I'm prepared to make a sustained commitment, because I know they'll probably waste as much money trying to ask for more as I ever gave them. But you get that idea. But that's a factor. But ultimately, that speech of McConnell was destructive, and of course, it enlisted the predictable response from Trump, which I mean, I don't know what good that bashing each other like this does. I really don't. The fact of the matter is, we're down to only 50 senators. We're about 6 seats away from majority in the House, and the bottom line is, right now, they can still railroad a lot of things through with that situation, given that they have the vice president. And that's why, people need to get over all this, I don't like this senator said that, or that congressman did this nonsense. Yeah, we'd all like them to all be better people. But the bottom line is there's a worse group of people out there, and that's the Democrats. And those people are intent on power above all else. You can see that they have almost no principle. It's just anything they can do to get power, no matter how destructive it is to the long-term good of the country, they will do. Illegal immigrants infected with COVID, let them on in. Americans, well, maybe we won't let them travel if they're from a Republican state. We're thinking about it. I mean, that kind of attitude is ridiculous. I mean, illegal aliens committing crimes, let them go. Americans that do something, full extent of the law. I mean, this is the kind of thing we're facing right now. We actually have a racist nominated to head the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. Yes, an African-American racist, but a racist. She thinks she's racially superior. How about that? I mean, that's the kind of crazy stuff, I mean, that we have going on right now. So, yes, the Democrats are what we need to oppose, and therefore we need to do everything we can to get every Republican in office we can get. Now, in some cases, in the primaries, I think if the state is right, primarying certain people is a good idea. In other cases, it's a bad idea. It all depends on can the person that wins actually win the election. And that's a critical thing, and that's a judgment call. In some cases I would say yes, in other cases I'd say no, but it's a case-by-case thing. And I think that's where I disagree with somebody. My general political attitude here is not pursuing vengeance, it's pursuing effectiveness. It's sort of like a chess game, if you will. You just want to maneuver yourself into a position where you have the right players in place to get the result you want. So, at any rate, I guess I'll start wrapping this up now. Don't want this too long. I'm kind of going on. And again, I have my tribute to Rush Limbaugh video, which I think people might want to see if you haven't already. And if you like these videos, please subscribe and give me a like. And any comments you have, I'd be interested in seeing what they are. I usually respond to them. And of course, there's a bell you can click if you want to get notified. So I'll close this for now, and until next time.